Welcome to CONEXEC, a global leadership platform for construction executives. Today, I'm on with Patrick Blair, and rather than me uh, talk about Patrick, I'd rather Patrick talk about Patrick. Patrick, tell us about yourself. Tell us about your company, and kind of your history and that. So we're interested.
Thanks for having me on, Scott. My name is Patrick Blair. I'm the president and owner of Cherry Creek Recycling out of Denver, Colorado. We are a full service demolition contractor in business. This is our 11th year in business. I have a construction management background degree from Colorado State University. Um, but kind of to start, I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky. Went to a tiny little private K through 12 school where my father was the headmaster.
Mm-hmm.
My mom was a stay-at-home mom. I got a scholarship to play football at Butler University, and blew my knee out early on in my college career. And the doctor said, you're not going to play on this again. You better find something else to do. And Butler being a small liberal arts college that everybody knows for their basketball, I thought, boy, that was my world. What am I going to do?
Mm-hmm.
So I finished out my freshman year and took a semester off and did a couple of mission trips to Ethiopia, Africa.
Oh, that's interesting.
Through my high school girlfriend's father. He was a cardiologist, and so they were medical missions. And I, of course, didn't know anything about anything, being 19 years old. So I built kitchens for refugees in the little kind of slums of Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. It was called Mechaniza.
Mm-hmm.
And that really kind of reset my outlook on life, my focus, priorities. These kind of working day in and day out with these people who have absolutely nothing. Third
Mm-hmm.
world doesn't even begin to describe what these folks go through. Their kitchens are made of cow dung floors, mud walls, and a tin roof,
Oh, wow.
made out of eucalyptus. The structure out of eucalyptus trees, and they'd give you the shirt off their back, um, feeding us and putting us up. We stayed at the All African Leprosy Clinic, where you get to meet some of these people. Leprosy is still a problem in the world, which I didn't know. It's been mostly eradicated everywhere I'd ever been. But to see a 5-year-old kid lying in bed without any fingers or toes, and the doctor just kind of slapping his stubs and saying, "This is what leprosy is. You can't feel anything, and it eats the nerve endings, and everything just starts falling off."
Oh, wow.
Um, it was an eye-opening experience. So I got back from the first trip, and had decided that I wanted to go into something that was not sitting behind a desk all day. I enjoyed the outdoors. I enjoyed kind of the freedom to move around. And my parents had suggested construction management as educators. They they kind of pushed me that direction. And so I was accepted to several programs, and at the time, Colorado State University was the number one program in the nation, or at least they boasted to be.
Well,
And my
they
credit,
still are a really good program.
are they still?
Yes.
Okay. I haven't been back there in quite a while, but all my credits transferred from Butler, and so that made the most sense, was to go start as a sophomore at CSU, in the construction management program. And I graduated in 2006, and went to work for a small demolition contractor in Denver. He hired me to be his estimator, project manager, business developer, laborer, operator, whatever I could fill the seat, he'd have me do. He had probably 8 or 9 employees, and we grew that business from about $1 million a year in demo to $3 million a year in demo, tearing bridges down, water plants, water treatment plants, those sorts of things all over Colorado, Wyoming, and New Mexico. And then the big crash happened there in 2008, and all the general contractors stopped subbing out work. And so we atrophied down to basically me and him and maybe one other guy, and just did piecemeal work here and there, at stupid low prices, and everybody knows that's not the way to stay in business. So, reading the writing on the wall, I walked across the street to the local scrap yard, and got a job as their mobile operations manager, tearing down semi-van trailers all over the country and kind of gutting warehouse buildings, and doing kind of oddball jobs for the scrap company. And then they landed the east bank of the Northrop Grumman shipyard in Pascagoula, Mississippi, the demolition after Katrina there in 2010. And they put me on that as their mobile operations manager. And we assisted the contractor, the demo contractor. They put everything on the ground, and at that point, we took ownership of the material and sorted, separated, and acted basically as an on-site scrapyard on a 177-acre project, shipping scrap all over the world, loading shipping containers. At the time, it was cheaper to send, and it still may be cheaper to send kind of contaminated copper and aluminum and different non-ferrous types to Asia, have them take it apart and ship it back to us separated. So
that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, they built the submarines on the east bank, and the west bank was all, cutter class Coast Guard ships and Navy warships, and it was a really interesting and fun project, and I gained a lot of knowledge there, and that's where I came up with Cherry Creek Recycling. When we got done with that project, I was promptly handed my walk-in papers, and I said, well, I'm gonna if you don't care, I'm gonna do what we did full time for myself. And I wanted to be kind of an on-site scrap recycling company, hence Cherry Creek Recycling. And I went back to Colorado to all the folks that knew me from my demo days a few years previous. We were climbing out of the recession, and things were starting to get a little better. And the response I got was, Pat, why don't you just quote us the demo, man? Like, we'd love to have you come do scrap, but we'd really love to have you come do the demo. And so I joke that my recycling company devolved back into demo. And here we are 11 years later, as a demolition company.
Well, that's interesting, weaving through history. It sounds like, where you started is where you ended up,
Yeah, pretty much. It's been a wild ride, that's for sure. I've had the unique experience of being a subcontractor and a general contractor, all the way through this business, certainly, and that has brought some challenges and some unique perspectives, certainly.
Well, that's an interesting history, especially the I spent a lot of time in Gulfport, Mississippi when I was in the service. So Pascagoula was
Okay.
right down the road from us, and
Yeah.
small
Yeah.
small world. And boy, there was a lot of work to do after Katrina. So,
There sure was. There
oh
sure was. Yeah.
shoot.
Yeah.
Well, so you discussed many things about how kind of your business model evolved here. Um, can you pinpoint one significant event that really shaped your business model today?
I've got a couple of significant events,
Mm-hmm.
Scott. Um, about a year into business, I was awarded a contract out on the Delaware coast, over the Indian River Inlet. Uh, Skanska was building the new cable stay bridge to replace uh, two two bridges side by side that were built in the 60s in the Indian River Inlet, which is one of the deadliest inlets in North America. Take lives all the time. Fishermen, um, 20 knots of current in either direction with the tides. It's a man-made inlet to the sound back behind there. And so the DOT's design for the new one was a big cable stay monster that will be there for 150 years,
Mm-hmm.
to replace the third or fourth bridge that had just been utterly destroyed by the ocean and the current. Um, and I was not the original contractor. I was actually the second one on site. The original contractor bid off the plans and specs. The river was 15 feet deep. There were some strong currents, but certainly doable with barges and a 999 crane picking the thing down. And the DOT, after bid time, said, gosh, there's a little more information you need to know. We made a mistake. The river's not 15 feet deep; it's 115 feet deep.
Oh wow.
And you're not budding barges into this river bottom. You're not budding barges into the river bank. The scouring underneath the piers on these two structures, divers can swim underneath the tremie seals between the piles. So he promptly said, "Thanks, but no thanks. I'm out." And I went out through my engineering firm to have a look and came up with a plan to set a 600-ton crane on either side of the riverbank with with ringer counterweight, and pick this thing apart from the riverbank. And the general contractor thought, boy, that's a great idea. We think that'll work. So we spent the next couple of months designing a pick plan and a crane assembly and disassembly and how to do this thing. And we submitted it to the DOT, and they promptly called a meeting, and said, well, there's a little bit more information you need to know. the the key wall that is depicted on the plans either does not exist or has been removed in places. We're not really sure. We don't know what's there. So we're afraid that when that 600-ton crane tows up with 100 foot of girder weighing 1,000 pounds a linear foot, you're going to put pressure on the riverbank and it's going to slough into the river. And they use the term catastrophic failure, which, any engineering firm and any contractor worth their salt pricks up at catastrophic failure. And so we were stymied right from the bat. I'm under contract for a $2 million bridge demolition, and the DOT is saying this is not a change in conditions. best of luck to you. You're under contract. And me being young and dumb and ready to take on the world, I plowed ahead. And came up with an idea that hit me in the middle of the night. We had, this was kind of one of those collaborative efforts where no one wants to take responsibility, but everybody has an idea of how to do it. So, what about helicopters picking girders off? Well, at 1,000 pounds a foot, that's going to take a minute with a helicopter. What about coming in and trying to float this thing out, in the 15 minutes of slack tide you have? Well, they're 7 to 13 feet deep, and it's going to take longer to torch them than it is than you have in slack tide. So we were just literally at a standstill for months. And the idea that hit me in the middle of the night was, what about a reverse launch? So we proposed 5 girder lines apiece. Each bridge was 1,000 feet long, side by side, sitting on piers in the river and piers on the river bank, and then abutments. So my engineering firm designed a queen post system that went down each girder line, because as this thing went into dynamic load, it wanted to become a wet noodle and kind of fold and bend and fall in, basically. So we erected queen posts on each girder line in strategically placed locations on the bridges. We cut each bridge, each of the 5 girder lines in the center, so 500 feet. Jacked it up, removed the bearing pads, the rockers, those sorts of things, and welded inverted Hillman rollers and welded those down to the piers and abutments, and then attached D8 bulldozers to a beam that was welded across the front face where the abutment back wall used to be. And we reverse launched. We dragged 500 gross tons, 500 feet at a time, 4 times off the substructure and out over the abutment and the approach.
Well, that's a major operation, huh?
So it was a monster operation. And everybody, when you went to the material suppliers and you want to do what? You got a set of brass balls that I don't think this is going to work, but I'm happy to be a part of it. That kind of small town attitude. And so anybody who's ever gotten a bulldozer stuck in the mud knows that, an excavator hooking into the blade of the bulldozer can pull that dozer out of the mud. And so in the sand on the beach, we're literally on the beach. In the sand, I had a couple of 349 excavators that we would get to a point when we rolled off that haunch and the weight of the bridge wasn't shoving those dozers anymore. Those excavators would come in and they'd start pulling as well. So you had D8s and 349s chained up to 500 foot of girder, five girders wide, 500 gross tons, rolling this thing off on those low friction rollers. So that made the papers, it made the news. It was a huge success for the DOT and the general contractor. But little bitty Cherry Creek Recycling had been told, you're doing this for your original contract because it's not a change in condition. And so for the next 4 years of my life, I was in business to pay my lawyers to battle out the change in conditions, which the DOT promptly denied. The general contractor had nothing to do with it. They'd washed their hands of it. We get to arbitration, and of course, I'm I'm awarded a multi-million-dollar win on a change in conditions clause, which both the DOT and the general contractor shared in. And so in that time, I was able to kind of build my resume off the work we had done. Able to pay the lawyers, pay most of the bills that were owed off that project that the original contract hadn't covered. And so this multi-million-dollar settlement comes in, and it's like a rocket ship to the moon. I mean, we're just taking off. We had run lean and mean, purchased some equipment through that time, which was now paid off, and my little struggling business at about year 5 or year 6 all of a sudden had cash in the bank, had equipment, had employees that had been through the war with me, and now we were kind of free to spread our wings a little bit and pursue some things that we wanted to. So I was finally bondable, no longer a concern, and that was that challenge kind of really honed some skills and forced us to pinch pennies and do it probably in a way that most businesses don't have to do it, or don't wouldn't ever choose to do it, certainly. So that was a big leaping off point. National attention. I certainly broadcast it to everybody I could think of. That certainly not the win, but the win on accomplishing the demo was a big deal for us.
Well, just going through that process, you had to have learned a lot, not just about your company, but how working with a big organization like the government, how do you contend with those things? And um, I wonder, I mean, what was their stance on that? The whole change of conditions. That seems pretty,
Pretty
pretty,
simple.
yeah.
Pretty
That's what I
obvious.
was looking for, exactly.
Yeah. I'm sure that we'll get into this a little bit later on, but one of the things that I have noticed in my career, now almost 20 years, is that at the project level, they're answering to somebody who wants to know why all of this was missed, and very often it's not the project level that missed it. They're just the poor schmucks that have to deal with the myth.
Mm-hmm.
And these DOTs are notorious for kind of cut and paste specifications, cut and paste plans. They're not well thought out, and they don't account for everything. And so I knew that I had won about 2 years before we actually won through the claims process with the Delaware DOT. You actually go in front of a board of DOT employees and you argue your case. And so that happened about 2 years into the 4-year process. And we actually won our arbitration in that because their response was, we agree with you that this is a change in conditions. However, the general contractor knew about it. So that didn't help me at the time, but that right there was an admission that my argument of a change was correct. They were just placing the blame somewhere else, which is what they had done for the 2 years it took us to tear that bridge down. So it was par for the course. And when we got there, the arbitrators actually sided more with the general contractor. They were responsible for a much smaller piece than the DOT. But yeah, it was certainly certainly an eye-opening experience, and I learned a lot. I cut my teeth on that one, and became it became a mantra for me: know your contract. And I say it all the time to my employees, really anybody who will listen. Know your contract. That's how I got them. You know, give the notice, write the letters, tell them it's a change, and don't give up. Just keep on, and wait them out, because in the end, you end up winning.
Well, that's interesting. That's probably really great advice for anybody. And that had to have been pretty mentally exhausting, having to go through all that for multiple different years. Dealing with something like that. And would you say that that's probably the biggest? Sounds like that kind of changed the game for you in business. I mean, once you were properly compensated for the work you'd done, that probably gave you a lot of opportunities you didn't have before.
It did. It gave me opportunities. I will say to that mental toughness, Scott. I'm Irish, which means I've got an Irish temper. But I also have an Irish iron will from my father that is unrelenting. I'm stubborn to a fault, and just through sheer grit and determination, I, I know I'm right. I know you're wrong, and I'm going to prove it to you. If it breaks me in half. And so, over the last 11 years, unfortunately, more often than not, I have to prove that my grit and determination is stronger than the adversary. But yes, it opened some doors. I became a federal contractor, which presented a whole new set of problems, which is where you and I actually met, and how we came to know one another was after that settlement in Delaware. I had an estimator who said, let's go after some federal work that can be really good. And I took him at his word, and to say that it has been a learning experience would be an understatement.
Well, it's
My business has been pushed to the brink again. Yeah, it has been pushed to the brink again, with delays and cancellations for convenience, because the federal government is even worse about cut and paste specifications than the DOTs. And so we're in the middle of a pretty big battle with the Navy at the moment, out here on a $100 million IDIQ in Southern California, that we're starting to see some cracks and some chinks in the armor. But we're 3 or 4 years into it, and I think I got another couple of years to go before it's all settled out.
Well, the interesting thing about, what you talk about is it is an extremely tasking, mentally exhausting process. But on the other side, it really builds that mental toughness you need in order to operate within that theater.
It does. It does. You're correct. I often wonder why it has to be so hard. You can it's point blank, cut and dried. You guys didn't tell me about this, and your response of "you should have assumed" is completely unacceptable. And I can't wait to get you into an arbitration room or a courtroom, because "you should have assumed" is not a response to a contractor.
Yeah,
I don't assume anything. If you didn't tell me, it doesn't exist. So, but you got to wait it out. You got to wait them out. You got to play the game, and you just one foot in front of the other. And
we'll
see in the end it'll work.
You hit on a very important topic of, project administration is so important, proper documentation. I once had a student that said, well, how are we supposed to do our job if you're documenting everything? And I told him, well, that's your job.
Right.
I mean, project administration unfortunately seems to go by the wayside a lot of times, and that's how you can keep yourself out of trouble and keep everybody in line.
It is something. It has been eye opening. As a business grows, I was boots on the ground every day in Delaware. I was the project administration. I was the final decision. I was the hook and bowl, so to speak. Um, I've started a family since. Just don't want to be boots on the ground in the way that I was
Mm-hmm.
anymore. I'm in a different phase of my life, and made a business decision based on the way a certain project was going to hire employees to be QCs and superintendents and SSHOs. And as you well know, I've gone back um, to spending the appropriate money to to manage these projects with an outside firm, because if you don't have the right team in place, it packs your lunch, and it packs your lunch quickly.
Yeah, no
And
joke.
if you got guys who are more concerned about their relationship with the entity you're working for than they are about the company that's signing the front of their check, it goes downhill fast very quickly. So
Well, it sounds like in the past you've had some very challenging circumstances. In the future, tell me about how you're preparing for the future. What are some of your plans? You know, uh, Bigger picture, 5 year or 10 year plans. Tell us a little bit about what your thoughts are preparing for the future.
yeah, so I'm at a bit of a crossroads right now. Um, when I signed this IDIQ with the Navy, I had four offices: Hawaii, California, Colorado, and Mississippi. Um, Given the struggles from these four projects and the non-payments and the change in conditions and just the general direction this thing has gone, that has shrunk back down to one office. Um, and I have a decision to make about whether I want to continue to pursue federal work, or demo work at all,
Mm-hmm.
um, but have made the decision that I'm going to go back to my roots. And about 4 years ago, I identified a niche in Colorado that exists in a lot of places around the country, but does not exist in Colorado. It's C&D recycling, so construction and demolition debris.
Mm-hmm.
And I have been researching and touring and becoming a member of the CDRA and those sorts of things for the last 4 years, and have finally decided to get off my rear end and do it. So hopefully here, we have our permit, and our design is complete and waiting on the county to issue permits. We're going to have the first C&D recycling facility in Colorado, which I plan to grow to 3 or 4 facilities over the next 5 to 10 years.
So what is a
But I'm
facility
not
like that?
sure.
I've never been involved in something like that. What is that? What is a facility like that? Obviously, it's taking things apart, but what does that look like? From your perspective.
Yeah, so it's state of the art these days. I don't know who some of your listeners are, but if they're older, they're kind of familiar with a demolition site, or a construction site for that matter. Uh, a lot of kind of sorting and separating of commingled materials as you tear a building down or as you build a building.
Mm-hmm.
And so what this facility does is we've got a giant tipping floor where a truck or a roll-off can comes in with materials off a job site, uh, and we load them into a primary shredder on the front end, which sizes all of the material commingled to about 3 foot minus, and that shoots into a ballistor, which then sorts and separates those commingled materials by size as well as 2D and 3D material. So you'll get your fines will drop through the blister paddles. Your 2Ds will be sorted and separated from your 3Ds, and those go out in two different directions onto picking lines.
Mm-hmm.
And those picking lines are then assisted by magnets for ferrous, air magnets for light, and you have human beings picking wood, concrete, shingles, tiles, asphalt, kind of all the different commodities. And I call them commodities because they can be, once they're sorted and separated, drywall, that they can be sold. And it is essentially landfill diversion, is what we are trying to accomplish. So that runs down a picking line. The employees pick off their designated commodities and drop them through a chute into bunkers below. And then whatever is missed goes on to a new picking line, which is then sorted and separated by robots. So this literally can run, if the employees go home at the end of the day, this facility can run 24 hours a day with the robots, and the robots just pick up what the employees are no longer picking, or they're set during the day to pick things that the employees aren't picking. So it's landfill diversion. You can get LEED certified, and they'll come in and do an audit of you for a year or two. And then what we're finding is that these job sites are having to drop 6 or 8 or 10 different bins, these construction sites, and they're sorting and separating their materials into the bins on the job sites. Well, job sites are notoriously cramped for space.
Yeah.
Very often they're prevailing wage projects, and you end up spending a small fortune to LEED certify your project, or even just be a human being and recycle. Those projects end up getting kind of unnecessarily burdened with the sorting and separating on site. And so this facility does that for them and gets a LEED generated ticket if it's a LEED project, or a certification for every load that comes in. This is how much was recycled. And I think it's truthfully the wave of the future. Roughly 50% of what crosses a landfill scale in Colorado is C and D, and we're looking to be able to achieve in the 90s percentile for recycling, for diversion.
Wow.
So
this is probably it got to be a fairly significant facility in order to do what you discussed.
It is. We went through this process and found out that to build the Taj Mahal with indoor, kind of bolted down, all of that was going to be $20 some odd million, because Colorado likes to burden their businesses with all the upgrades for the site. So our taxpayer dollars are just horribly misappropriated. And so to have a building, you got to plant $1 million worth of trees and bushes, and to have a road, you got to put in a cul-de-sac for their fire lane to turn around, and the list goes on and on. So we, finding that out, revised it to an outdoor operation that is completely mobile. And so our design of all of this equipment is either on tracks or skids, or wheels and axles. And it's all 100% hook it to a truck or a loader and pull it off site, put it on a truck and pull it off site. There's no building, just a canopy over the picking line. No hard infrastructure, nothing. Pretty much just the tipping floor is the only hard surface that will be on the site. And so it dropped our cost from 20 some odd million down to $4 to $5 million.
Mm-hmm.
And it made it made it a viable option. Because we're competing with landfill tipping fees, and Colorado has notoriously low tip fees. So the inbound tip is paying for a lot of the facility.
So what's special about Colorado? And you mentioned it a little bit before.
As far as what?
As far what's special about Colorado? Well, number one, what's special about Colorado? Okay, no, I'm just joking.
Well,
But secondly, because I grew up in New Mexico, so and there's
okay.
nothing special about New Mexico. I'm sorry, everybody that is from New Mexico, but that's the truth. And and the in what you're doing, is Colorado, is what makes that special? Is it just where home is, or is there an opportunity there? That's kind of what I'm wondering. You mentioned something about like that it's a good place to do something like this.
It's a good place only because there's not any competition
Mm-hmm.
for C&D. You go to California, there's a C&D facility in every town, on every corner. Baltimore, Maryland, Washington D.C. I mean, you just go down the list of the places we've toured. They're everywhere. I'll get a little crass for a second. What makes Colorado special is the saying that you are officially a Colorado resident when you have peed on the Continental Divide, knowing that both Texas and California are downstream. So that's one of the things that makes Colorado special, I guess. If you have any strong opinions,
and then you got the four corners there. I mean,
you do. You have the four corners. It's an outdoorsman heaven. You can be skiing in the morning and trout fishing in the afternoon. All the cliches. If you don't like the weather, wait 10 minutes. It'll change. 4 seasons in a day, 300 days of sunshine. It's probably not that much, but it's just it's a beautiful place on earth. The woman I married has 2 boys, 10 and 8. So obviously we're not going anywhere because the other party has something to say about that. It's where I've chosen to set down roots, and we have a 9-month-old, and I'm concerned about his education. I was afforded an incredible education, which opened the door, many doors for me. Colorado's not a great place to get an education, but we think we've found a kind of a nice place to send them, which is going to afford them the kind of education they deserve. It's just it's a big little town. Denver's a big town, but it's small enough that you can have your own kind of little community within it. And in the contracting world, for 16 years I've been in Colorado. I know I've got my Rolodex is full of every president and CEO in Colorado, and so creating a facility that they will all use kind of made sense to be able to pick up the phone and say, hey, I've got this opportunity for you to maximize your profits by getting rid of a headache, basically.
So where are you located? Are you more towards the center of the state?
We're in Brighton, which is just outside Denver.
Okay.
136th and I-25, basically.
Well, I was gonna say I used to play football. We used to go up to Durango and play football. We always got beat, but we Durango is definitely a nice place too. A little different than
sure
around where you're at. So
yeah.
So
beautiful country.
I kind of changing gears here a little bit. You described a few things about your persistence and some of your personal traits. We do have a group of people that are younger that listen to this podcast that are you know striving or want to own a business someday, maybe be in middle management, maybe younger. And what I used to always ask when I was younger is when I found somebody who was successful, is I'd ask them, well, what skills and abilities did you bring to the table that have helped you in the business world? So I'm asking you that exact same question.
Sure. I I should say I did. I mean, maybe the listeners were able to glean. I started this business with my entire life savings, $35,000 when I was 28 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I'm about to turn 39, so I don't know what you consider old and what you consider young, but I'd say I'm not even to the 60s, the 1960s over the hill age yet. So I'd like to just put that in there that I consider myself to be a young entrepreneur as well. I think obviously mental toughness, an iron will, a, 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 a work ethic that does not quit. All things that were instilled in me as a child. I grew up in a house where the end result was not as important as the work that went into it.
Mm-hmm.
So if I got a C on a test, the question would be, do you feel like you prepared hard enough for that test? Um, I After I blew my knee out in college, I, I it was all I could do to get D's and C's for my second semester, my freshman. I mean, I was depressed. I was demoralized. I was done. I didn't know what I was going to do. Football was my reality, my world, my life. And so, kind of coming out of that freshman year, I remember my mom and dad saying to me, we're proud of you. We know you worked hard to to make it through, and to not fail out. And so I would say that those traits are you're going to be successful no matter what you do, so long as you're the first one at work and the last one to leave. um, and you work every day, and you're not afraid to work holidays and Saturdays and Sundays and your birthday and all of that. That's what it takes to succeed, because nobody gives two hoots about you, so long as once your job for them has been fulfilled. Um, and you got to work to make sure that you survive to the next one. I know that you're probably familiar, Scott. IQ, EQ, CQ.
Mm-hmm.
You're born with your IQ. There's not a lot you can do about that. So I won't touch too much on that. But I'm a firm believer that emotional quality and communicative or cultural, the CQ, can be learned. I and I don't like bragging on myself here, but I am someone who can I can relate to all types.
Mm-hmm.
I've been the laborer. I've been the guy turning wrenches. I've been the guy at the top. I can walk into just about any group of people and understand what they do every day, what their triggers are, what grinds their gears, because I've done it, and I've had that ability, I think, my entire life. I was that kid in high school who had, you remember high school, it was full of groupings: the popular kids, the computer kids, the sports kids, just the nerdy kids. I could kind of wash between any one of those groups in high school. Um, pretty seamlessly. And that has carried over. I have a good friend who worked in corporate America for much of his life, who says, Pat, you're a fifth floor executive. You can hold your own in a boardroom, but that laborer out there that's running the shovel, you're just as comfortable with him as you are in the boardroom. So that CQ, my point being that you can learn that. You can work
Mm-hmm.
on CQ, you can work on EQ, the emotional intelligence, kind of seeing whether or not, and I need to work on my EQ. That's something that I don't. My Irish temper flares up, and I don't see what everybody else is feeling most of the time. It's about what I'm feeling and how you've wronged me or how you've hurt my business, not the other side of the coin, because there's always another side of the coin. So those are strengths and weaknesses for many people. The other thing that I think that I certainly enjoy it, and 11 years in business, I must be pretty good at it. Is the chase. I love the hunt. I love the chase. I love the kill. It's 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 after the fact when you have to start working with the people that you've just chased, hunted, and killed. That bogs me down. But that next opportunity, that next kind of dream job. We tore down the Saturn V rocket facility out here in California. There's only one guy on planet Earth that can say that he's torn down the facility that built the rockets that sent human beings to the moon. And he's on the phone with you right now, Scott. That to me is, shout it from the mountaintops. It's to me, and I'm 38 years old. I don't know what the future has in store for me, but today that's the pinnacle of my career. The rocket facility. Nobody else on Earth can say they did that. So that's that chase. And then I think another strength certainly is your ability or my ability to problem solve and think outside the box and come up with an idea or a solution that everybody else is struggling with. I've gotten out of it because we're working a federal regime at the moment. But every project has challenges. Every project has changes, and I have a unique ability to kind of think outside the box and come up with a solution that may not always be as economical as the easy way to do it, but there's a reason the easy way to do it can't be done. And so that I think that outside the box perspective, being able to step back and look at it is a unique ability that unfortunately a lot of people don't possess. So,
Well, you pointed out something that I think that is unique to a lot of construction executives, especially people who will become the CEO or the president of organizations, and that is um, that you have a business development or have a background where you have that ability to communicate with people and that type of thing. And I always joke around and I always say you don't see too many CFOs become CEOs. And I know there's a lot of
right.
accountants out there that are pissed that I said that, but it's true because those personal
It
skills,
is.
have an emotional intelligence, and those personal skills are so vitally important. Um, I was reading articles that you spend the reason most executives fail is because when you're not an executive, you spend 20% of your time leading people and 80% of your time doing stuff. And then it flips to 80-20 once you become that C-level position. And most people
Yep.
just not prepared for that, you know? So,
Yep. Yep. That's and that actually that can be, so along those lines, Scott, that can be a strength or a weakness. Certainly you want it to be a strength, but surrounding yourself with people that you can lead, uh, but that you don't have to coddle or handhold.
mhm.
That to me is a business killer. Is when you spend your time down in the weeds, um, working on the problems instead of focused on the future. That you're the wind, the sails, and the rudder of your ship. And if your crew aren't sailors, and they're all carpenters, you gotta, when the wind cracks that mast, you're good. But when you've got to outrun that storm, you're in real trouble. And so I think a skill that young entrepreneurs thinking about doing this need to assess is, do I have the ability to weed out the pretenders, or do I have someone in in my wheelhouse or in my Rolodex that can do that for me? I mean, there are a lot of people who don't interview well,
Mhm.
on both sides of that table, right? The guy asking the questions and the guy answering the questions. Um, and so, when you are looking for those kind of key positions, it's very important to know what their strengths and weaknesses are, so that you can anticipate. All right, I got a superintendent who does not like confrontation. Uh, he's phenomenal at what he does, but he's not going to let somebody know that they're treating him poorly. He needs someone to do that for him, and so you've got to be able to anticipate the project you put him on. Is this going to be adversarial, or is it going to be, for the most part, easier? Those sorts of things are I struggle with them, certainly, and rely on other people to kind of tell me, yeah, this guy's good. There's a reason, Scott, they're looking for jobs. There's a reason they're on the bench, so to
Mhm.
speak. And you got to ferret that out and weasel that out. Why are you not currently employed? But why are you? I posted an ad. Why are you responding to it? So,
Because unemployment pays too well. No. That's true. Well,
yeah,
that's going
that's
down a
true.
whole different road. We don't even need to go
Oh yeah,
down,
no,
but
no,
but
no,
uh
yeah,
but well, eh, I have one more question for you, and then I want to go to the speed round where we kind of do a rating scale. But what personal and professional advice would you give to somebody who's really seeking a position, like many of the positions you filled, a senior level position within an organization in construction?
personal and professional advice.
Yes.
Um, the personal advice is, don't take it personally. It's business. Um, you're gonna have your feathers ruffled. You're gonna run into folks that are just they're just there to push your buttons as far
Mm.
as you're concerned. And have a thick skin, and get up every morning ready to go back to it. If you can't compartmentalize uh, the adversarial issues in your life, you do not belong. Certainly in the industry, but not at a higher level. And compartmentalizing, um, the, the the noise around you, is is something that you have to be able to do. Professionally, be the hardest worker. It's incredible how far you can go just on hard work. I mean, at some point in time, you're gonna you're gonna have um, you're gonna have that moment where you're discovered as not as bright as you play it, or not as capable as you play it. But if you work hard every day, it's incredible what you can achieve. It's a simple answer, Scott. I don't really have any kind of keys to success. It's just getting up every day and putting one foot in front of the other, and making sure that at the end of the day you can look yourself in the mirror and say, I worked my hardest today. And I did it morally and ethically too. That's a problem in this industry. Morals and ethics are just they're going down the drain. More often than not, they don't exist. It's all about the dollar. And I think that we all have a moral and ethical obligation to try and make this industry better. Um, and
Because
and
it
that's
definitely needs it.
that's hard.
So,
Yeah. No, it's hard. It's hard every day. You're slapped in the face with just how corrupt this industry has
yes.
become, and it's getting worse. Um,
Well, you
for
bring up a.
I'll give you
Go ahead.
I'll give you an example very very quickly. Had a settlement conference with a subcontractor who did not perform all of their work on a project. Um, and in the settlement conference, his lawyer, my lawyer, he's there making excuses. He's got his estimator and his project manager there making excuses. I'm saying, but you didn't perform this work. And when asked the point blank question about why my price, why my contract stated what it did to him, his response was, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit. He would rather admit to trying to defraud the federal government out of a change in conditions than give up any money in his settlement conference for work that he did not perform. That it in fact was not a change that he was claiming, but he and the lawyer kind of cut him off, but everybody heard him say, "Well, we were playing a game with the federal government."
Oh my gosh.
And so, that's what. Unfortunately, there's a lot of that kind of seediness in this industry, um, and it doesn't always show itself on the come. You got to dig a little bit. So,
Well, something you said
yeah.
that I just want to piggyback on is I have a poster in my office that says there's there are 10 things you can do that make you successful that require no talent. And
Hmm.
the top one is work ethic. And I always
Yep.
think about that because one of my guys is really hard worker, and he was a tennis player in high school, and he was a state championship tennis player, and his sister was also a tennis player, and his dad said to me one time because we were working together, and his dad said, "Well, if he only had talent." So,
Yeah.
but it was
Yeah.
a good thing. He wasn't trying to say something bad. It was just like, hey, he has the work ethic, and that's where he got where he was. But
Yep.
sometimes when you have a talent, you don't use all the other things you have, So,
Absolutely.
but
Yeah.
that's a good lesson. So let's go to our speed
Yeah.
round here. So how this
Sure.
works is we have 8 different categories, and you can rate them from a 1 to a 10. 1 being the least important, 10 being the most important, and they could all be tens.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna throw a number. I'll throw something out there category. You throw me a number, and if you wanna further explain why you gave it that number, you can. So with
Okay.
that said, we'll start with scheduling.
Um, I'd give that an 8 or a 9. Certainly, certainly for the federal government, that is an 8 or a 9. Your schedule matters, and it's very often hard to kind of sit there and look forecast out. But when there are changes, they come back to that schedule. And what did your schedule say? So that's high.
Estimating.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that's a 7 or an 8. Probably not as crucial as the scheduling. Estimators miss things all the time. It's a fact of life. It's how you it's more about how you make up for their misses than the estimate. You want to have a good estimate, don't get me wrong. That's a big part of making money and being successful, but just bound to make mistakes. So
and the next two
but
categories,
still a 7 or an 8.
One is contracts, the actual physical contract, and one is contract administration, the actual execution of what's in the contract. So you can talk about those two.
I'm gonna put both of those at 11s or 12s. I said earlier in this podcast, Scott, that my mantra is know your contract. I have found in my career that they don't mean anything anymore. They're not worth the paper they're written on, because no one cares what they say. But when you get to a courtroom, when you get to arbitration, when you get to mediation, the way you have administered that contract is how you make up for the deficiencies that have been realized during the project based on what that contract says. So if you have to give notice, you better have given notice. The other party is going to ignore their contractual requirements. They just are. And when they do, that's where you're able to win, because they're not administering their contract. They don't know their contract. They are more messed up than you are, and that's your opportunity for. Unfortunately, it's just, and this may be a pessimistic attitude, Scott, but it is. I think it's the truth. We are in a litigious world anymore, and everything is a battle. Everything turns into an argument. Know your contract. Know what you're required to do under your contract, and then administer those requirements from that contract, and you will prevail. 11, 12, 13, I don't think there's a number high enough on those.
What about design?
So this IDIQ is a design build, and design's important, but I'm not going to put it as high as estimating. I think I think it's probably a 6, maybe a 7. And again, in my world, in demolition, why do I have a design build demolition IDIQ? I mean, it's silly. But the reason I rated it higher than I would have is because with this, the federal government likes to say, "Oh, there's $100 million over there. Let's try and get something on that demo MAC, that demo IDIQ, that we wouldn't normally get because that money's not ours." And so you get staircases, and you get paving, and you get windows cut into buildings, and you get this kind of construction phase. Let's upgrade the fire system, those sorts of things. And if you don't have a good design, that kind of a thing can end up costing a lot of money, especially to a contractor who's not that's not the world I tear stuff down. I don't build it, and there's a reason I don't build it. So my staircase at the Saturn V rocket facility was designed per the code, taking into account the air conditioning units underneath it, and it was taller and wider and bigger and more robust than really it needed to be, and that was a cost that I had not anticipated in that estimate, because we had to have we had a subcontractor build it and install it, and that was a pretty significant bust in my estimates, because my design didn't account for the fact that this could have just been bolted directly to the building instead of foundations and legs and platforms and all the things that end up happening on a steel staircase. So
accounting.
If you're bonded, it's a 10. If you don't want to pay, well, let me phrase that differently. Tax strategy, it's a 10. If you're a small mom and pop shop, it's a 10 simply because you're the one doing it. For years of my startup, I was the guy sitting down on a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning and entering costs into QuickBooks. I mean, it was horrible. But it's very important to know where you are, what your costs are, not just simply for the third parties that are looking in on you, but for you, because when you run into changes and delays, you need to know what it costs to recover that. And so, are you $15,000 a day? Are you $20,000 a day? Does 6% overhead cover it, or do I need to go with a daily rate and charge them what it actually is? So every business is different, and so understanding your costs is a 10, absolutely a 10. It's so much for a lightning round. I've had something to say about every single question you've asked.
well, you know what? That's good, because we have to understand where you're coming from. Business development, and a lot of people like to talk about selling work.
Yeah, that's high. And part of business development, I think, is that EQ, that EQ that you either do or do not possess, but you can make up for a lack of EQ with a strong picture of your business. I landed this IDIQ. I'd been a federal contractor for a matter of months, and landed this IDIQ with a response to a request for price that was better than everybody else's. My business, I didn't have the federal experience that probably some of the other businesses had, but that picture that I painted through literal photographs, but the story as well, I think is what got us out here on this, with the opportunity to tear down the Saturn V rocket facility. My business development, my ability to tell them what I had done and what I was capable of doing was better than some of the other contractors that were applying, and there were a lot. I mean, there were 30 or 40 companies that showed up to the job block, and 6 of us were selected. So that's a big one, Scott. That makes or breaks it. If you're able to communicate to your client, whoever that client is, what you can do, it opens doors. And I took that Delaware project and opened doors you just saw the doors opening out in green light. Think of it as traffic down the road, green lights in front of the ambulance, based off your marketing ability. It gets your foot in the door.
Last but not least, leadership.
100%. 100 out of 10. People want to be. They want to be led. They want to be. They want to be assured that the guy on the rudder, captaining that ship, is is capable, qualified, and your ability to bring somebody along. They may not have all of the skills that you have. They may not have all the abilities that you have. But your ability to lead that person and bring them up in your company gets paid back tenfold. Which is why I gave it 100. It's 10 times 10. It just my father told me a long time ago, and it is, I think, 100% true. You will work for more bad bosses than you do good bosses.
Yeah.
The bad ones are a dime a dozen, but when you find a good one, stick to them. And so I try every day to be a good boss. My emotions get the better of me sometimes, and that creates a dynamic in the office or a dynamic in the field that I end up having to repair. But take that again is take responsibility for it, own it, show them that you are accountable, because you're going to hold them accountable, and that's big. It's big because there just aren't very many good ones, and so strive to be a good one.
Well, that's all I have for today. All the questions. I want to thank you, Patrick. It was enjoyable. I think you gave a lot of good advice for sure. It's interesting what you got planned for the future. And as I do with all my guests, I want to give you the last word before I close it out.
I appreciate this opportunity, Scott. I've had a lot of fun. Who knew talking about yourself could be so much fun?
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to getting this project done that you and I are currently working on together, and kind of picking that crossroads and moving on down the road with whatever the future holds. And yeah, I think anybody listening out there that's thinking about doing this, if you want to reach out to Scott and get my contact information, I'd be happy to answer questions if anybody has it. Because I've had as I stated at the beginning, a unique perspective, and a unique experience so far, in this industry, and am happy to chat about it with anybody who's got.
Well, thank you again, Patrick. And I know we took a hiatus there for a little bit due to COVID on some of the podcasts we've been doing, but we're back and we're better and we're vaccinated. So plan to see the podcast coming out on a regular basis again. And once again, thank you for your time, Patrick, and see you guys next week.